In a quiet town surrounded by lush green hills and thick woods, Lieutenant Sarah Collins stood out like a beacon of strength, though most people didn't realize it at first glance. She was petite, with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a calm demeanor that masked the fierce determination within her. Sarah wasn't just any soldier. She was part of an elite military canine unit, tasked with handling two highly trained German shepherds, Max and Luna. These dogs weren't ordinary pets. They were battle-hardened partners who had saved lives in some of the toughest situations imaginable. Every evening, Sarah took Max and Luna on patrol along the outskirts of the town. It was routine for her, a way to keep both herself and her canine companions sharp. The route often brought her close to a roadside diner nestled near the edge of the forest. The diner wasn't fancy. It had chipped paint on its walls and flickering neon signs, but it was a popular hangout spot for locals. On one particular evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the road, Sarah noticed a group of bikers loitering outside the diner. The bikers were loud, their laughter echoing through the otherwise peaceful evening. They wore leather jackets adorned with patches, their motorcycles gleaming under the dim lights of the diner's sign. At first, Sarah paid them little attention, focusing instead on keeping Max and Luna in step beside her. But as she passed by, their conversation shifted toward her. One of them pointed at her uniform, sneering, "Look at this one, a girl playing soldier? What's she gonna do, huh?" Another chimed in, "Yeah, those dogs probably can't even bark without permission." Sarah clenched her jaw but kept walking. She'd heard comments like these before, and she knew better than to let them get to her. Still, it stung, not because she doubted herself or her dogs, but because it reminded her how quick people were to judge based on appearances. To them, she was just a small woman with two big dogs. They couldn't see the countless hours of training she'd put into building trust with Max and Luna. They didn't know about the missions where her team had been the difference between life and death. All they saw was what was right in front of them, and they dismissed it. As she moved farther down the road, Sarah glanced back over her shoulder. The bikers were still watching her, their smirks lingering. She felt a pang of frustration, but pushed it aside. There was no point in engaging with them now. Instead, she focused on her dogs, giving them gentle commands to stay alert. Max trotted ahead confidently, his ears perked up, while Luna stayed close to Sarah's side, her intelligent gaze scanning the area. Together, the three of them formed a seamless unit, each aware of the other's presence and ready to act if needed. But deep down, Sarah knew this wouldn't be the last time she encountered the bikers. Something told her their paths would cross again, and when they did, things might not end so quietly. For now, though, she continued her patrol, letting the cool evening breeze wash over her. Max and Luna seemed to sense her mood, staying unusually close, as if offering silent support. As the stars began to dot the sky above, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't face it alone. The next day, Sarah returned to her patrol route with Max and Luna by her side. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the nearby forest. As she walked along the familiar road leading to the diner, she couldn't shake the memory of the bikers' taunts from the previous evening. Their mocking laughter still echoed in her mind, but she refused to let it weigh her down. Instead, she focused on the rhythm of her boots hitting the pavement and the comforting presence of her dogs. When she approached the diner, she wasn't surprised to find the same group of bikers loitering outside. This time, however, they seemed more deliberate in their actions. One of them leaned casually against his motorcycle, chewing on a toothpick, while another revved his engine loudly as if to grab her attention. Sarah kept her pace steady, her eyes scanning the scene ahead. She could feel Max tense slightly beside her, his ears perked up, alert to every movement. Luna stayed close to her other side, her intelligent gaze fixed on the group. "Well, well," one of the bikers called out, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Look who's back for round two, the girl with the big dogs." His friends chuckled, exchanging amused glances. Another biker stepped forward, blocking her path entirely. "Hey, soldier girl," he said, smirking. We were just wondering, what makes you think those mutts are anything special? You ever seen them in action? Or are they just for show? Sarah stopped walking, her hand resting lightly on Max's collar. She didn't respond immediately, choosing instead to study the man who had spoken. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with tattoos covering his arms and a cocky grin plastered across his face. It was clear he was trying to provoke her, to see if she'd rise to the bait. But Sarah wasn't about to give him the satisfaction. Instead, she straightened her posture, her voice calm but firm as she replied, "These dogs aren't here for entertainment. They're trained professionals, and I suggest you respect that." Her response only fueled their amusement. One of the bikers snorted, crossing his arms over his chest. "Trained professionals? Yeah, right. What can they do, fetch sticks?" Another chimed in, laughing. "Bet they'd run off if we snapped our fingers." Sarah felt a flicker of frustration but pushed it aside. She knew better than to engage in petty arguments. Instead, she signaled Max and Luna to sit beside her, their obedience immediate and precise. The sudden silence from the dogs seemed to catch the bikers off guard. For a moment, they stopped laughing, their smirks fading slightly. As they watched the pair remain perfectly still, their focus unwavering. "Still think they're all bark?" Sarah asked, her tone steady. "You're welcome to test them, if you're brave enough." Her words hung in the air, daring the men to push further. But none of them moved. Instead, they exchanged uncertain glances, their bravado faltering under her unshakable confidence. One of the bikers muttered something under his breath before stepping back, allowing Sarah to pass. As she continued down the road, she gave Max and Luna a reassuring pat, silently thanking them for their patience. Though the encounter hadn't escalated, Sarah knew it wasn't over. These men thrived on intimidation, and backing down now would only embolden them to try again. Still, she reminded herself why she was here, to protect and serve, not to pick fights. As the distance between her and the bikers grew, Sarah reflected on the tension she'd just faced. It wasn't the first time people had underestimated her because of her size or gender, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But every challenge was an opportunity to prove doubters wrong, to strengthen her bond with Max and Luna, and to remind herself of the incredible work they did together. Together they formed a team that defied stereotypes and proved strength came in many forms. And though the road ahead might hold more confrontations, Sarah knew she and her dogs were ready for whatever came next. The third encounter with the bikers came on a cloudy afternoon, the kind where the air feels heavy and charged, as if a storm is brewing just beyond the horizon. Sarah was on her usual patrol route, Max and Luna trotting confidently beside her. The road leading to the diner was quieter than usual, but she could already hear the faint rumble of motorcycle engines in the distance. Her instincts told her something was off, and sure enough, as she rounded the bend, she found the bikers waiting for her. This time they weren't just lounging around. Their motorcycles were parked haphazardly across the narrow road, blocking her path entirely. There were more of them now, 6 or 7 men, their leather jackets creaking as they shifted their weight. One of them stepped forward, twirling a wooden stick in his hand like it was some kind of toy. He smirked at Sarah, his eyes darting between her and her dogs. "Hey, soldier girl," he called out mockingly. "We've been talking about you. Still think those mutts are tough enough to back you up?" Sarah stopped in her tracks, her hand resting lightly on Max's collar. She didn't say a word, her expression calm but alert. She could feel the tension radiating from her dogs. They were ready to act at her command. But she also knew that reacting too quickly could escalate things unnecessarily. Instead, she scanned the group, taking note of their body language and positioning. They were trying to intimidate her, using their numbers and size to make her feel small. It wouldn't work. Another biker chimed in, louder this time. "Come on, show us what they can do, or are you all talk?" His voice dripped with sarcasm, and a few of the others laughed, clearly enjoying themselves. Then, without warning, the man with the stick lunged toward Max, poking him sharply on the side. Max let out a low growl, his hackles rising instantly. Luna mirrored his reaction, stepping closer to Sarah, her teeth bared slightly in a silent warning. "That's enough," Sarah said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She took a step forward, her posture unwavering. "Back off or you'll regret it." But the bikers didn't listen. If anything, they seemed emboldened by her response. One of them leaned down, reaching out as if to grab Luna's leash. "Aw, look at this one," he sneered. "She's just a pup. What's she gonna do, bite me?" It was the final straw. Sarah had tried to avoid conflict, hoping they'd tire of their game and leave her alone, but now they had crossed a line. These weren't just animals to her. They were her partners, her family. No one got away with threatening them. With a deep breath, she tightened her grip on Max's collar and gave a sharp whistle. Both dogs froze, their focus locked entirely on her. "Last chance," she said, her tone icy. "Move your bikes and let me pass, or my dogs will decide what happens next." For a moment, there was silence. Then one of the bikers laughed nervously. "Yeah, right. Like we're scared of a couple of dogs." But his bravado faltered when he saw the intensity in Max's eyes, the way Luna's muscles coiled like springs beneath her sleek coat. Even the man with the stick hesitated, glancing uncertainly at his friends. Sarah didn't wait any longer. She signaled to Max, who immediately moved forward with precision, circling the group and cutting off their escape routes. Luna stayed, close to her side, her piercing gaze daring anyone to make a wrong move. The bikers began to fidget, their earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of the situation. For the first time, they realized they weren't dealing with an ordinary handler and her pets. This was a professional, a soldier, and her dogs were every bit as formidable as she was. As the tension reached its peak, Sarah stood tall, her presence commanding respect. The bikers may have started this confrontation, but it was clear who held the power now. The air was thick with tension as Sarah stood her ground, her posture unwavering despite the chaos around her. Max and Luna moved with precision, their every step calculated and deliberate. The bikers, who had moments ago been laughing and taunting, now looked uneasy. Their bravado began to crumble under the weight of the dog's intimidating presence. It was clear that this wasn't just a show. It was a demonstration of skill, discipline, and raw power. "Still think they're all bark?" Sarah asked, her voice calm but laced with authority. She gave a soft command and Max sprang into action. In one fluid motion, he pinned one of the bikers against a nearby tree, his teeth bared but not touching. The man froze, his eyes wide with fear as he realized how close he was to feeling those sharp canines. Max didn't growl or snap. He simply held his position, his body language making it clear that any sudden movement would be a mistake. At the same time, Luna circled the group, her movements graceful yet predatory. She stopped in front of another biker who had tried to edge away from the scene. With a low rumble deep in her throat, she blocked his path, forcing him to retreat back toward the others. The man raised his hands defensively, stammering, Hey, easy, I wasn't going to do anything." But his voice betrayed his panic, and the rest of the group fell silent, watching in stunned disbelief. Sarah stepped forward, her boots crunching softly on the gravel road. "These dogs aren't here for games," she said, her tone firm but measured. "They're trained to protect, to track, and if necessary, to incapacitate threats. You've seen what they can do so far, but trust me, this is only the beginning." To drive her point home, she signaled Luna to perform a controlled takedown. The dog lunged forward, knocking another biker off balance and pinning him to the ground with her paws. He gasped in shock, struggling briefly before realizing resistance was futile. Luna didn't bite or snarl. She simply kept him immobilized, her weight enough to hold him down without causing harm. The man muttered an apology, his face flushed with embarrassment and fear. By now, the entire group was visibly shaken. The man who had been twirling the stick dropped it, raising his hands in surrender. Okay, we get it," he exclaimed, glancing nervously at Max, who still hadn't budged from his position by the tree. "We were just messing around. No need to call them off." Sarah crossed her arms, studying them carefully. "Messing around?" she repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "You call threatening someone and their animals messing around? Do you even realize how dangerous your actions were?" One wrong move and my dogs could have reacted instinctively. And believe me, you wouldn't want that. Her words hit hard, each syllable carrying the weight of truth. The bikers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Some muttered apologies under their breath while others stared at the ground, clearly regretting their earlier behavior. For the first time, they understood that they weren't dealing with ordinary circumstances or ordinary people. Max and Luna remained in position, their focus unbroken. They weren't acting aggressively, but their sheer presence was enough to keep the bikers in check. Sarah gave them a subtle signal to ease up slightly, allowing the men to regain some composure. She knew the lesson had been learned. There was no need to push things further. As the tension began to dissipate, Sarah took a step closer to the group. "I don't want trouble," she said evenly. "But I also won't tolerate disrespect. Not to me, and certainly not to my dogs. If we cross paths again, I expect you to remember this moment. Is that clear?" The bikers nodded quickly, their earlier arrogance replaced by humility. One of them mumbled, "Yeah, we got it. Sorry, ma'am." Another added, "Won't happen. Again. Promise." Satisfied, Sarah gave Max and Luna the command to stand down. Both dogs returned to her side instantly, their loyalty and obedience evident in every movement. As the bikers scrambled to move their motorcycles out of the way, Sarah watched silently, her expression unreadable. When the road was finally clear, she signaled her dogs to continue the patrol, leaving the group behind without another word. Though the confrontation was over, its impact lingered, not just for the bikers, but for Sarah as well. She couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and relief. Pride in her dogs, who had performed flawlessly under pressure, and relief that the situation hadn't escalated further. As they walked away, Max and Luna trotted confidently beside her, their heads held high. Together, they proved once again that true strength lies not in aggression but in control, and in the unbreakable bond between handler and dog. As the dust settled and the bikers hastily moved their motorcycles out of the way, Sarah stood tall, her presence commanding respect even in the aftermath of the confrontation. Max and Luna remained by her side, their bodies relaxed but alert, ready to act if needed. The bikers, still shaken from the demonstration of skill and control, avoided making eye contact with her or her dogs. It was clear that the lesson had sunk in deep. This wasn't a woman to be trifled with, and her dogs were not mere companions. They were highly trained professionals capable of far more than anyone could have imagined. Sarah took a step forward, her voice steady and firm as she addressed the group one last time. "Let me make something very clear," she began, her tone calm but authoritative. "These dogs aren't here for entertainment. They're soldiers just like me. They've been trained to handle situations most people can't even imagine, and while I don't want trouble, I also won't hesitate to protect myself or them if pushed too far." Her words hung heavy in the air, each sentence punctuated by the weight of truth. She went on to explain how Max and Luna had served in high-stakes missions overseas, tracking down threats, protecting troops, and saving lives. Their training wasn't about aggression. It was about precision, discipline, and trust. "Every command they follow is earned through years of hard work and mutual respect," she said, glancing down at her loyal companions. "They're not weapons, they're partners, and they deserve the same level of respect you'd give any soldier." The bikers listened intently, their earlier bravado replaced by genuine remorse. One of them, the man who had been twirling the stick, finally spoke up. His voice was quieter now, stripped of its earlier mockery. "Look, we didn't know. We thought it was all just for show. We didn't mean no harm." Another chimed in, his face red with embarrassment. "Yeah, we're sorry. Won't happen. Again." Sarah studied them for a moment, searching their expressions for sincerity. While part of her wanted to press charges, to hold them accountable for their reckless behavior, she knew that sometimes lessons learned through experience stick far longer than legal consequences. Letting this incident serve as its own punishment would leave a lasting impression, one that might even change their attitudes toward authority figures in the future. With a slow nod, she accepted their apology. "All right," she said simply. "But remember this. Respect isn't given, it's earned. And disrespecting someone because of how they look or what you think they're capable of says more about you than it does about them. The bikers nodded, vigorously, eager to put the encounter behind them. As they mounted their motorcycles and revved their engines, there was none of the usual swagger or noise. Instead, they rode off quietly, casting furtive glances over their shoulders as if expecting Max and Luna to chase after them. But Sarah didn't need to escalate things further. The message had been delivered loud and clear. Once they were gone, Sarah allowed herself a small sigh of relief. She knelt down beside Max and Luna, running her hands over their heads and scratching behind their ears. "Good job, my brave ones," she murmured softly, her voice filled with pride. "You handled that perfectly." Both dogs wagged their tails in response, their loyalty unwavering. To them, Sarah wasn't just their handler, she was their leader, their protector, and their family. As they resumed their patrol, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the incident. It wasn't the first time she'd faced skepticism or ridicule because of her size or gender, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But moments like these reminded her why she loved working with Max and Luna. Together, they formed a team that defied stereotypes and proved doubters wrong every single time. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through countless hours of training, trust, and shared experiences. By the time they returned to their post, word of the encounter had already begun to spread. A few locals who had witnessed the standoff approached Sarah cautiously, offering words of admiration and gratitude. Some asked about Max and Luna, curious to learn more about their training and abilities. Others simply thanked her for standing up to the bikers, acknowledging that her actions had restored a sense of order and safety to the area. For Sarah, the day ended on a reflective note. She knew that challenges would always come her way, but she also knew she had two incredible partners by her side. As she watched Max and Luna settle into their kennels for the night, she smiled to herself. The bikers may have started the day underestimating her, but they ended it learning a valuable lesson, one that would stay with them long after the memory of the confrontation faded. The days following the confrontation with the bikers brought an unexpected shift in the small town's atmosphere. Word of what had happened spread quickly, carried by whispers at the diner, murmurs in grocery store aisles, and even casual mentions during morning coffee runs. People who had once passed Sarah and her dogs with little more than a glance now stopped to watch them with admiration. The story of how Max and Luna had stood their ground against a group of rowdy bikers became the talk of the town, turning Sarah and her canine companions into local legends almost overnight. Parents began bringing their children to catch a glimpse of the heroic duo whenever they were out on patrol. At first, Sarah was taken aback by the sudden attention. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, preferring to focus on her work quietly and without fanfare. But as families approached her with wide-eyed kids clutching stuffed animals shaped like German shepherds, she couldn't help but soften. The children bombarded her with questions. Are they really soldiers? Can they smell bad guys? Do they ever get scared? Sarah answered patiently, kneeling down to meet the kids at eye level. With Max and Luna sitting proudly beside her, she explained their training in simple terms they could understand. These two are like superheroes, she said with a smile, scratching behind Max's ears. They protect people, find things that are lost, and help keep everyone safe. The kids giggled when Luna let out a soft bark, as if agreeing with her handler's words. Some even asked if they could pet the dogs, and after giving Max and Luna a reassuring nod, Sarah allowed it. Watching the children beam with joy as they touched the furry heroes made her heart swell with pride. But it wasn't just the kids who were inspired. Even some of the bikers who had initially mocked Sarah started showing up around town with a newfound respect for her and her dogs. They didn't approach her directly, likely too embarrassed to face her again, but their actions spoke volumes. One day, Sarah noticed that someone had left a bag of high-quality dog food outside her post with a note that read, "For Max and Luna, thanks for teaching us something important." Another time, she found a bouquet of wildflowers tied to one of the fence posts near her patrol route, accompanied by a card signed anonymously. "You've earned our respect." What surprised Sarah most, however, was when a few members of the biker gang started volunteering at the local animal shelter. It seemed unlikely at first, these rough-looking men handling puppies and cleaning kennels, but soon enough pictures of them playing fetch with rescue dogs popped up on social media. Someone joked online that maybe the bikers were hoping to redeem themselves. And while no one knew for sure, it was clear that something about the incident had left a lasting impression on them. Even the townspeople rallied together to show their support. A local business owner organized a fundraiser to support Sarah's military K-9 unit, inviting her and her team to speak at the event. Dozens of residents turned out, eager to learn more about the work she and her dogs did. Sarah gave a heartfelt speech, sharing stories of missions where Max and Luna had saved lives and emphasizing the importance of teamwork and trust. By the end of the evening, the fundraiser had raised enough money to purchase new equipment for the unit, a gift that would make their work safer and more effective. As Sarah walked home that night, Max and Luna trotting happily beside her, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The bikers' taunts may have started as an act of disrespect, but they had unintentionally sparked something far greater. Respect, she realized, wasn't always given freely. It often had to be earned through action and integrity. And thanks to Max and Luna, she had shown the town and herself that strength came not from intimidation, but from unity, discipline, and love. The bond between Sarah, Max, and Luna had grown even stronger through the ordeal. Together, they had proven that true courage wasn't about seeking conflict. It was about standing firm when challenged and inspiring others to see the world differently. As the stars twinkled above, Sarah looked down at her loyal companions and whispered, "We did good today, didn't we?" Both dogs wagged their tails in agreement, their unwavering loyalty shining brighter than ever. Back at her post, Sarah found herself reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few days. The encounter with the bikers had been unexpected, but it had sparked a chain reaction of change, not just in the town, but within herself as well. She spent extra hours bonding with Max and Luna, reinforcing their connection and celebrating their teamwork. These moments were precious to her, not only because they strengthened their partnership, but also because they reminded her why she loved this life so much. Each morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Sarah took Max and Luna out for long training sessions. They practiced drills, ran obstacle courses, and honed their skills in scent detection. To an outsider, it might have looked like routine work, but for Sarah, these exercises were more than just practice. They were a celebration of trust and communication. Every time Max followed a command or Luna tracked a scent flawlessly, Sarah felt a surge of pride. Their bond wasn't built overnight. It was forged through years of dedication, patience, and mutual respect. During one of these training sessions, Sarah decided to teach them a new trick, a playful leap-and-catch game using a soft disc. Max caught on quickly, his powerful legs propelling him into the air with ease. Luna, always eager to keep up, bounded after the disc with equal enthusiasm. Watching them play together filled Sarah with joy, reminding her that despite their serious roles as working dogs, Max and Luna were still full of energy and spirit. It was moments like these that made all the hard work worthwhile. Meanwhile, the townspeople continued to show their support in small but meaningful ways. Some brought homemade treats for the dogs, chewy biscuits baked with care, or left notes of encouragement taped to the gates of Sarah's post. Others stopped by during patrols to chat briefly, thanking her for her service and sharing stories of how her actions had inspired them. One elderly man told her that seeing Max and Luna stand up to the bikers gave him hope, that even when people underestimated you, staying true to yourself could turn things around. "You taught us something. Important," he said warmly. "Strength isn't about size or noise, it's about heart." Sarah appreciated every gesture, no matter how small. It reminded her that her work mattered, not just to her unit, but to the community she served. Even the once hostile bikers seemed to have turned over a new leaf. When Sarah passed the diner, where the confrontation had started, she noticed several of them helping load supplies onto a truck destined for the animal shelter. They worked quietly, almost shyly, avoiding her gaze but clearly committed to making amends. Though they never spoke directly to her again, their actions spoke louder than words. As the weeks went by, Sarah began preparing for her next assignment. Her unit had received orders to move to another location, leaving behind the town that had come to admire her and her dogs. Saying goodbye wasn't easy, for her or for the townsfolk, but Sarah knew it was part of the job. Before departing, she organized a small gathering at the park, inviting locals to meet Max and Luna one last time. Children ran around laughing, tossing balls for the dogs to chase while parents snapped photos to remember the day. It was a bittersweet farewell, but Sarah felt grateful for the connections she'd made. On her final night in town, Sarah stayed, up late writing letters of thanks to everyone who had supported her and her team. She included special notes for the children who had visited her dogs, encouraging them to dream big and treat others with kindness. For the bikers who had volunteered at the shelter, she wrote a heartfelt message acknowledging their efforts and wishing them well. And for Max and Luna, she penned a private note, promising to always cherish the bond they shared. The next morning, as she packed up her gear, Sarah glanced around the post one last time. The memories made here would stay with her forever, the challenges faced, the lessons learned, and the friendships formed. With Max and Luna by her side, ready for whatever lay ahead, she stepped into the unknown with confidence. Together, they had proven that strength came not from intimidation, but from unity, discipline, and love. As they drove off into the distance, the townspeople waved until the dust settled, knowing that Sarah and her dogs had left behind a legacy of courage and compassion. Months had passed since Sarah and her dogs, Max and Luna, left the small town that had become a second home to them. The winding roads, the lush hills, and the friendly faces of the townspeople lingered in her memory like a cherished photograph. Though she was now stationed elsewhere, leading her unit through different challenges and missions, the lessons from that brief chapter of her life stayed with her. It wasn't just about the bikers or the standoff. It was about the connections she'd made, the respect she'd earned, and the reminder that even in tough times, kindness and integrity could leave a lasting impact. Before leaving, Sarah had arranged for a plaque to be placed at the local park, a tribute to all working K-9 units across the country. Engraved on the shiny metal were words that summed up everything she believed in: courage, loyalty, partnership, honoring the heroes with 4 legs. Beneath it was a small carving of 2 German shepherds standing side by side, their silhouettes strong and proud. The townspeople unveiled the plaque during a small ceremony, sharing stories of how Sarah and her dogs had inspired them. Parents brought their children to see it, explaining the importance of teamwork and respect. For Sarah, knowing that her legacy would live on in the hearts of those she'd touched meant more than any medal or award ever could. Back in her new post, Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed energy. Max and Lucia adapted quickly to their fresh surroundings, tackling each mission with the same determination and precision they always had. Whether it was tracking down missing persons, securing dangerous areas, or assisting in rescue operations, the trio worked seamlessly together. Their bond only grew stronger with time, built not just on training but on trust and shared experiences. Every success reinforced what Sarah already knew. Her dogs weren't just tools, they were partners, family. Occasionally, Sarah received updates from the town. A letter arrived one day from the owner of the diner where the infamous confrontation had taken place. He wrote about how the bikers who once caused trouble were now regular volunteers at the animal shelter, earning nicknames like puppy protectors among the staff. Another note came from a teacher who said her students had started a project called Guardians of Kindness, inspired by Max and Luna's bravery. They collected donations for shelters and performed acts of service in honor of military working dogs. Sarah smiled as she read these letters, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing her actions had sparked something positive. One evening, under a sky painted with streaks of orange and pink, Sarah sat beside Max and Luna, watching them rest after a long day of training. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the challenges they'd faced, the victories they'd celebrated, and the lives they'd touched along the way. There were moments when doubt crept in, when people underestimated her because of her size or gender, or dismissed her dogs as mere animals. But every time they proved their worth, not through aggression, but through discipline, loyalty, and heart. As the stars began to twinkle above, Sarah leaned back, letting the cool breeze wash over her. Max rested his head on her lap, while Luna curled up nearby, her ears twitching occasionally at distant sounds. In that peaceful moment, Sarah realized something profound. Her story wasn't just about teaching others a lesson, it was about learning one herself. She had discovered that true strength didn't come from proving others wrong. It came from staying true to your values, no matter the odds. And sometimes the greatest victories weren't won through force, but through understanding and compassion. Sarah glanced at Max and Luna, their steady breathing a comforting rhythm in the quiet night. Together they had shown the world what it meant to stand firm without losing sight of what mattered most. As she whispered a soft, "Thank you," to her loyal companions, she felt ready for whatever lay ahead. For Sarah Collins and her incredible, saw the road ahead was full of possibilities, and they would face them together, step by step, paw by paw.